Hi everyone, my name is Alondra Perez Cortez, and today I will be talking to you about the habits of wearable technology consumers in today's market. First off, let me walk you through how we'll be discussing this topic to you today. I'll start off with a project and data overview, data analyses, recommendations and actionable steps from those analyses, and leave time for questions. So let's get started. Bellabeat can better understand the smart technology industry and consumer motivation to guide marketing strategies. Today, we will be using competitor data to explore daily habits of current consumers of smart tech devices and apply these insights derived from the dataset to Bellabeat's marketing and business strategies. I outlined 3 topics of interest I choose to focus on in this dataset: device usage, time usage, and sleep delay trends. Now, let's talk about the data that I used to help me answer these questions. In this presentation, I will be looking at CC0 public domain dataset called Fitbit Fitness Tracker data found on Kaggle.com, a dataset publishing platform and published by the user Mobius to identify trends on how consumers of fitness smart technology are using their devices. 33 Fitbit users consented to submit personal data using their Fitbit trackers, including data related to a minute-level physical activity, such as distance or step counts, physiological markers such as heart rate and calories burnt, and monitoring markers such as weight and sleep. This data was collected via the crowdsourcing website for businesses Amazon Mechanical Turk over 31 days in 2016 by these researchers down here. Now, with this data, it's important to keep in mind some constraints that will limit the transferability of the findings in today's presentation, such as a small sample size of 33 participants, the data being collected a little while ago in 2016, and the lack of contextual descriptive data on the participants of this study. However, there are still some great conclusions that we can take from this data. Now let's get into it. The first topic I'd like to explore is how wearable technology consumers are using their devices. I hypothesize that the more someone engages with their Fitbit device, the higher likelihood of increased activity. The first way I can look at usage is by identifying what features consumers use the most and the least. This is an alluvial plot that shows the changing group sizes of usage for 3 features of the Fitbit: step count, sleep, and weight logging. On the y-axis, we have the proportion of participants out of 33. I then group the participants into 4 groups based on the number of times they entered data each day within the 31-day period of the data collection, where those who never put anything in for that feature were categorized into the never group. Less than a third of the total data collection days, in other words 10 days or less, were categorized into the low recording group. Moderate recording was assigned to people who recorded between 11 and 20 days. And lastly, high recording was assigned to people who recorded more than 21 days for that category. And as we can see, the most used feature was the step recording feature, followed by sleep, and lastly, weight logging. We can see this as the groups of low and never increase across the features, and the high recording group decreases to the right, to the different features. Now, within the limited scope of the sample, I see that consumers are not really using the weight logging feature. While it's also outside of the scope of this data, the increased membership of the never group for weight recording could possibly be due to the difficulty or inconvenience of logging their weight. But further understanding of how this data was collected may reveal why. Secondly, I can see that there are more equal group sizes in the sleep feature, And I think that this could be a gap in the market that Bellabeat can capitalize if our team can find a better way to serve and appeal to customers. And lastly, I see that step counting data is the most plentiful in this sample. So that means that we can analyze this data in more than a few ways. Today, I will be looking at the relationship between step recording and activity. Now, is there a relationship between engagement with the device and activity? In this scatter plot, the x-axis shows the number of records, or number of days, that were recorded out of 31 days of this data scope collection. And on the y-axis, we see the average activity or average steps taken per day. This statistically significant correlation coefficient shows that it is a moderate, positive relationship between these two variables. Now, with further data that can demonstrate a more causal relationship between these variables, this conclusion can be used to encourage engagement with the device for a higher likelihood of achieving their fitness goals. Moving on to the next scope of trends that I analyzed. We move into trends in time. What patterns are present in times that people record activity? I hypothesize that exercise times will align with the typical schedule that most people have, which is a 9-to-5 job. Here, we see the average step count of all participants in the sample on the y-axis, per hour of the day on the x-axis. We can see that in the early afternoon and evening are the most popular ranges of time to log in some steps across our sample. However, I believe that there may be more to this pattern than we can see here. Now, this graph shows us the averages of the whole sample, but some factors that may affect when someone decides to log their steps can vary on many things. In our data, we can identify and account for at least one of those factors: activity level, how generally active someone is. So, I created the density histogram of monthly steps, where I plotted the distribution of total steps that each participant took in the 31-day period to estimate the type of active person they are on this histogram, where more active people who recorded more steps in that month are on the right and less active people are on the left. I could divide this into 4 equal parts as quartiles, like so. This is the same graph as in the previous slide, but now color-coded to represent the 4 groups of activity level, otherwise known as quartiles, based on the total number per participant. In this case, quartile 1 is the least active in red. Quartile 4 is the most active in purple. I hypothesize that more active people will be more consistent in when they choose to work out. Now, if we look at the same slide again, where we look at the average steps per hour of the whole sample, we can now see what those trends look like based on the estimated activity level. Here, I took the average of total steps each participant took for every hour like before, where the y-axis is the average steps, and on the x-axis we have the hour of the day, based on the same groups from before in the quartiles. We see that the top 2 most active groups, or quartile 3 and 4, have peaks around morning, afternoon, and evening, kind of coinciding around a typical 9-to-5 job. The second to least active group, or quartile 2, has a small peak around the morning, but I see the afternoon and evening peaks as stronger and clearer. And then lastly, we have quartile 1 in red, who seems to have one peak in the late morning. In summary, dividing the sample into groups based on activity level revealed more information than looking at the group as a whole. This can serve as encouragement for Bellabeat's marketing and development team to tailor user experience based on consumer habits and fitness skill. As an example, perhaps if the app identifies hours of the day in which they are consistently active, it can remind them to hydrate as they prepare to go to their daily workout, further encouraging our consumers to continue to engage with the product. Moving forward to the next section, I would like to demonstrate my exploration of sleep data. Specifically, I asked, what is the relationship between sleep delay and activity in this dataset? Now, I hypothesize that as activity is higher, the sleep delay will decrease. I think that people who expend more energy will likely be more tired and find themselves having better sleep, defined by shorter sleep delay after getting in bed. Here, I assess the relationship between sleep on the y-axis in minutes to steps per day on the x-axis. Unexpectedly, we see a weak but statistically significant relationship between sleep and steps per day, meaning that in this sample, as someone takes more steps per day, they sleep less. I then thought about how time of exercise might affect the ability to sleep. According to the Sleep Foundation in 2020, sleep experts warn that vigorous exercise close to bed increases delay of sleep and lowers sleep quality. To visualize any possible trend of this, I color-coded the hour in which the most steps of that day were taken. If I saw more blues and purples, even reds on the right, and more yellows and green on the left, that would demonstrate that people who are engaging in more exercise close to bed are getting less total sleep. However, that's not the case when I don't see a clear relationship. But without further investigation into this, I cannot identify if the time in which vigorous exercise contributed to the negative relationship between sleep and some steps per day. Moving forward, I took another look at another metric of sleep, and I compared time in bed and time asleep. Here we have overlapping histograms of time asleep in red and time in bed in blue in minutes across the x-axis. This graph demonstrates the ratio of time asleep to time in bed in this sample and assumes general features of the quality of sleep. But with more information on the time in which the people of the sample went to bed, we would be able to definitively say more about the quality of sleep in terms of describing latency to fall asleep. What time do consumers fall asleep relative to other variables such as activity levels? If we had more data, we could track their sleep stages and so forth to tell us more about the quality of sleep. But for now, I measured the difference in the peaks to tell me that, in general, this sample had about a 40-minute difference in the time in bed to time asleep ratio. To take a closer look, I wanted to see if activity levels played a role in the difference between these peaks. So again, I split the data into quartile of average daily steps. The shapes of the curve are more variant across activity levels, but within the groups, the shape is the same, just shifted over between time asleep and time in bed, except for quartile 4, where the density peak height for the time spent in bed increased compared to time asleep. In addition, quartile 4 had the highest ratio difference between time in bed and asleep, with almost an hour difference, while the rest of the groups had similar ratios to that of the complete sample, which again was about 40 minutes. This seems consistent with the previous scatter plot that showed a negative relationship between activity and sleep. If we had more descriptive data about the sleep events, perhaps we could make more specific conclusions to our clients and provide them more substantiated recommendations to improve the sleep as they embark on their fitness journey. And that brings me to the end of the data analysis discussion portion of this presentation. Let's move on to discussing the methods to implement my findings. As we saw in the previous unit, activity was positively correlated with engagement and logging of progress. we can encourage users to engage with our products to motivate them and keep them on track with their fitness goals. To keep them interacting with our app and products, we can implement a point system like that at Gold's Gym, where members can redeem points every time they check in to enter into giveaways for or gym equipment. Another successful model is the goals and streaks method, like that of Duolingo, where members are motivated to keep coming back in hopes to continue their streaks, even if it's possibly by taking a stroll through the neighborhood on rest days. Related to encouraging engagement, I believe it's also important to brainstorm and identify what are the hesitations or barriers that prevent users from using our products. Automation of data entry like weight may increase records of weight because the scale can send the data to the app as soon as the user weighs themselves, with no further action from the user. Related to my last note, maybe users can enter their points to redeem a Bluetooth scale. Another barrier that came to mind was after wearing my own smartwatch consistently, it sort of stunk, and I had no idea I was supposed to clean it at minimum twice a week. Setting reminders for users to keep up with their upkeep of their devices may prevent disuse of their product. Lastly, offering a diverse selection of styles to personalize their devices would likely prevent users from choosing to skip out on wearing their watch because it doesn't match their aesthetic of the rest of their outfit. Again, I encourage using a wide selection of colors and patterns to really demonstrate our commitment to the diversity among women. Moving forward, earlier we saw that this sample's habits can be parsed by activity level. I recommend personalizing notifications such as workout ideas based on their fitness level and around their set fitness schedule. This can be in the form of encouraging words such as keep it up, at times that the app recognizes these trends, or have users input the schedule that they want to stick to. Lastly, I would like to recommend sleep health education. According to the Sleep Foundation, sleep hygiene is taking steps to optimize sleep quality, such as creating a relaxing bedtime routine. Educating users on this concept may help spark interest in discovering their own sleep habits and improve upon them. We can help with this by implementing wind-down notifications, such as the ones implemented by Apple Health. It would likely be helpful for users to wear their devices to sleep if they are reminded to charge their devices during the day and put it back on before they go to sleep. All in all, taking the time to understand habits of wearable technology users will help better understand our consumer base and offer practical solutions to help out customers achieve their fitness goals and increase engagement with our products to ensure long-term success of Bellabeat. I hope these recommendations were clear and useful. And with that, any questions? This is a recording, so no questions right now. Well, with that, I would really like to thank you for listening to my presentation. And if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to reach out to me on my website or via email. Thank you.